Hey, thanks for joining me today. I'm Stephen Rathburn. Today in this quick video, we're going to paint this scene not far from my home in Montana. We'll start from a sketch to a finished product. I'll make some changes, of course. So if you're new, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. Let's get started. This scene is not far from my home in Montana. It is beautiful, but I thought I could make some slight changes to it. So by the magic of graphic art, I added some mountains in the background and a little pond in the midground. For demonstration purposes, I'm using watercolor paper here, but it's coated with acrylic gesso, so it is waterproof and archivable. I put the coating on both sides of the paper, 2 coats on one side, 1 on the back. Once it's coated, I tape it down just like a watercolor. This is an example of my last video. And as you can see, it's very pliable. You can mat it and frame it just like a watercolor, except you don't need the glass, which is really convenient. And here's another example of several videos back. I'll leave a link to those videos below. There's also a link for this sketch if you'd like to download it. It's free if you'd like to use it for your own painting. This is my palette I use all the time. I can mix just about any color with these. Lemon yellow, light red, burnt umber, Payne's gray, ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, and raw sienna. Of course, white. Again, I don't consider that a color. To begin with, I like mixing up just 3 basic colors. Lemon yellow and Payne's gray makes a perfect green, real natural. Payne's gray and alizarin crimson makes a real deep violet color. It's about a 50-50 mixture. I just mix a little white there, just it's easier to see what value of color I have. And then I can adjust it from there. And then, as always, ultramarine blue and white. I'm starting off in the very top part of the painting with a medium called liquid. It thins out the paint quite a bit, so you don't want to overdo it. And then mostly white with a little bit of that pre-mixed blue, but not much. I can darken up that sky a little bit later. A little darker blue for those beautiful mountains in the background. I want these to be very light so they look way off in the distance. As you'll see, this is quite a departure from the original photograph. I just feel it'll add more depth to the painting. For distant snow, we don't want to use pure white. But I'm using pure white on the brush, but there's already color on the canvas, so it mixes together. It's not pure white. The snow on the top of distant mountains will never be pure white. It's always a slight bluish color. If you've seen my videos before, you know I advocate mixing colors right on the canvas, not on the palette. Besides just those few basic colors I pre-mixed. I think I'll add just a little tiny bit of violet in that blue, just for a little bit more character. Now I don't want to put this straight green for those distant mountains, or hills, if you want to call them. Notice that I'm using a little violet color, light violet, mixed in also with a little bit of raw sienna here. Not mixing the colors on the palette, but actually mixing them on the canvas, then of course we get such a variety of colors. That'll keep the viewer's eye from getting bored, if you will. So I really want to use some vertical strokes for these rocks or cliffs in the background. And again, I want that color to mix on the canvas. This will create a texture-like look. So I'll be grabbing many different colors from my palette. I just love these cliffs here in the midground. I'm going to use all kinds of different colors from the palette as I paint these. To begin with, I'm primarily using that violet, pre-mixed violet color, a little raw sienna, some reds, and you'll see me put some blues in later. And again, mixing them right on the canvas, not on the palette. Now I'm starting to use that pre-mixed green in full strength. Not quite yet, but you can see it as it gets closer. I'll start using right on off the palette. Now I'll clean off my brush just a little bit before we get back into the blue for the pond. Here I'll use the pre-mixed blue along with the pre-mixed violet. You don't want to mix them all together, just kind of leave the colors kind of marbled on the canvas. I'll add a little raw sienna in that green color around the lake. Again, just for a little variety. I'll start these rocks in the foreground with a little undercolor, some darker colors, and some undercolor for the close-up trees. This darker color may look black, but it definitely isn't black. It's very deep violet. That'll probably show up as I mix a little white in with it later. Notice how many different colors I pull off the palette to put in these rocks in the foreground. Most of these colors you don't see in the photograph, but it just makes the painting just a little bit more interesting. For these colors here in the foreground grass, you'll see green, reds, mostly pinks. As I first start putting the color on the canvas, it will kind of mix together, but later on you'll see that I add individual strokes in a vertical action just to try to indicate that grass. Of course, that pink color is a lot of white, light red, a little raw sienna, tiny bit of yellow. Again, hopefully you can see the advantage of not mixing these colors completely on the palette. I want to mix them and see them kind of marble together on the canvas. Now for those darker greens underneath the cliff there in the midground, you can see that to that green color, that pre-mixed green color, I've added the pre-mixed violet color. And that makes a very deep green. Notice for those trees in the background, way in the background there, that I use that filbert brush. Filbert brush is kind of a flat brush, but I turn it so it is vertical. And very quick strokes just to indicate those trees. Now I'm just kind of blending in some more blue for the sky. Using my finger, of course, is a handy, quick way to blend in some color. And skies get lighter as they come to the horizon, so I'm just indicating a little darker color above. Also helps to kind of show in the clouds just a little bit. And then I'll kind of work just a little bit more color in those mountains in the background. And here again, you can see me, I'm mixing color right on the canvas. And at this point, I'm blending a little bit more than I will in the foreground. Now, if I were painting a scene with a lot of sky, maybe a real stormy sky or something, I wouldn't do nearly as much blending. This is just to kind of push everything way off in the background. We don't want the attention on the sky or the mountains in this particular painting. want more of the foreground to show the pretty grass colors up front, and just a tiny bit of that little pond back there. I'll clean off my brush just a little bit here so I can add just some more colors into those trees in the midground. In this area, we don't want too much detail. Again, we want it just be everything to be kind of soft and not real distinct. Now I'm going to add some areas where there aren't any trees in the hills in the background. I guess we could call them parks. But anyway, I'll put the full color, mostly white, on there, and then just kind of slowly marble it in. And you'll see here that looks like parks or areas where there's no trees in the midground. Then I'll put a little darker color around them so you can see the base of the trees. And again, for the trees in the background, just small little vertical strokes, nothing too detailed. Most of the time, the quicker you go, the better it is. Now, as I put these trees up against the cliff, notice how many different colors I use on my brush at one time. The brush will go into the green mixture, and the raw sienna, and the dark violet. And then I'll swirl it together right on the canvas. You see how those colors just marble together? But you can still see the individual colors. It's such an effective way to show that there's individual trees, a different tree of different color, but yet it's easy to indicate that. And now for the ground here, just on the lower side of the lake, that still needs to look farther off in the distance, so you'll see me marble in a little white there. And a little raw sienna. And maybe I'll add just a little tiny bit of light red in there also. And you can see here on this foreground, just to the right of the rock here, that this is a departure from the photograph. I'm putting here a lot more of this high grass in the foreground rather than the way off in the distance, the bushes way off in the distance. Those real quick vertical strokes indicates high grass. Once the canvas is pretty much covered here in the foreground is when I can start putting on more full color and showing some real distinct strokes. This is where I can start adding a little more detail into the rocks, and then of course to put some grass up around the bottom of the rocks. Again, we don't want to fuss too much on detail, just as quickly as we can paint here. And again, for those hills in the midground area there, a lot of that light violet color and some blues pushes it off in the distance to distinguish between the foreground and the background. I want to just indicate those trees just with really quick taps and turning that filbert brush so it's pretty narrow. I'll have to soften these up just a little bit, but I just want to put them into the first place and then we'll soften them up. And here's where I'll clean off the brush and then I'll use a clean brush as I soften up some of these shadows that I have just put in the hills in the midground. You'll see me wipe the brush off after every stroke. This makes it so I don't make mud out of all the different colors that are in there, but I just kind of marble them together just a little bit more. And using this clean brush, also I can pull some of that color up into the color of the distant mountains, and it kind of just puts a softer edge on the tops of those trees. Again, I want to clean off the brush after every stroke, just so I don't make mud out of the edges of those trees. Now, and again, you can see some of the softer blue color I put in there just to push them off in the distance just a little bit more. I'll add another park in that midground there, just to the left or the right of the tree on the left. And now we're going to add some more color to that tree on the left. A little bit more variety. Again, you can see me dipping my brush into a lot of different colors there. And don't be too particular about the color. Just pick a color and put it in there. If it doesn't look right, just color it back over. Now for the tree on the right, need a little bit more dark in there, but for now we'll just kind of leave some of the color right there. We'll put a little dark and a little more shadow in there in just a little bit. And now again, I'll strengthen up a little bit of those rocks just underneath the cliff. Just lightening it up with a little bit of pure white. And of course, it mixes in and doesn't end up being pure white, of course. Now a little bit more detail for the trees, and again the midground, just to the left of the pond there. Let's start out with quite a bit of dark color, and then I'll add some lighter color on top a little bit later. They'll kind of stick out there for a while, but we'll just leave them like that for a little bit. Just kind of like that, the rock there in the middle of the picture. All right, now it's kind of annoying. It's a little dark, but we'll work on it here in just a minute. Get some of the darks in for these trees. Again, notice not too much detail, just trying to turn the brush from one side to the other to indicate these trees. You notice so far that I have used pretty much primarily this same filbert brush. I try to use as large of brush as I can, just to try to keep from getting too fussy or getting too much detail in the painting. Eventually we'll have to go to a little bit smaller brush for some of the finer detail, but we're not going to have much detail in this painting. It's all going to be just different colors and suggestions rather than detail. If you'll notice, I move around a lot from one area to another, and I think that's necessary. We don't want to spend too much time just working on one area. If we work on little areas at a time, we can see the piece develop, and it's a little easier for us to see what we need to add. If we just work a little, then this little here, a little there, it develops the whole painting, rather than just little tiny areas at a time. That's the beauty of art, is that our eyes move around the painting, and we just catch little areas that catch our attention, and then we turn our attention there and fix it. So It's really relaxing, actually. Now, I do have to clean off my brush a little bit here for, again, to touch up the snowy areas of those distant mountains. And again, I don't want them to be too eye-catching. I don't want them to stick out. I just want them to just blend in. And again, it shows the distance and the depth of the painting. Now it's time to turn our attention again to the foreground rocks. You can see some different colors going in here. Put a little light up on top of the rock and just kind of work it down. See a kind of dry brush effect there on the front of the rock. And if you can compare it to the photograph, you can see there's a lot of different variation. Again, this is just kind of just an indication of what we see. It's the artist's interpretation of what he sees in front of him. It's never wants to be a copy of the photograph. If we get too into detail, we can kind of make a really tight painting. What we want is a loose structure of what we see in front of it. You can see here on this rock and the tree on the far left is much different than the photograph. Of course, the photograph has a big rock in the way. And when I took that photograph, I thought it was really cool, but I later on thought it really is going to stick out in a painting. So again, a departure from the photograph itself. Finally, I'm getting to this dark rock that's been bothering me right in the middle of the painting. Anyway, we'll take care of some of that darkness right in the middle. Still, you can see from that it is working as a main interest of the painting. And again, you can now I can start to add a little bit more detail, a little bit more color, I should say, in the very foreground there with a little tiny bush there, that lighter green bush. Again, just using that full green almost with a little yellow in it and vertical strokes, real light. Now I have to get some more white on the palette and kind of clean it off a little bit so I can put some pure white on there and mix up a few more colors here that I'll need for the final touches in this painting. More white, more of the green, mix up a little more green, and the violet color we'll need a little bit more of for some of the final touches here. And this is where we can just go to town. Just using all kinds of colors, just really free, whatever color we might be having on our palette, just add it in there. If it doesn't work, just paint over it. You'll see here that I've got a kind of the wrong color here on this foreground rock on the left here, but just an added a little more warmer color. Easy that is to fix up color we don't like. If it's too thick color on there, just scrape it off with a palette knife and put on some more color. Mix it together on the canvas. Just enjoy the painting. As you can see now, some of these colors just right off the palette just go in full strength right onto the canvas, and of course they don't end up full strength depending on how much you work it in, but in this case this is where the just the little light touches, don't spend too much time, just quick strokes, and having a full amount of paint on the brush. This also creates a nice texture to the painting. Now, again, on those trees on the left, again, just add a lighter color now. We started off with the darkest color, now we're adding some lighter color touches on there, in addition to a couple more darker colors where we might have covered up a little too much there. But you can see these colors kind of mixing together here on this tree on the left. Those midground trees there too, you can see the same thing. They need to be lightened up a little bit. Some of the darks need to be just softened up a little bit with some lighter colors. Now for this rock and the tree and shadow here on the far right. Had that color a little too dark. I'm going to put a little bit more green over that violet color that I put in there. And it then starts to look more like a shadow from the tree and the rock rather than it being too dark. So yeah, I'm putting full white on those trees in the midground there, but as they go on the thicker paint, then it marbles together. And that touch of red there, I really enjoy this red. Now, as you can see, so I start putting in some reds here and there, and red and green are perfect contrasts of one another. And so it creates, even though we can't see it in the painting, it creates curiosity, or we can't see it in the photograph, but it creates a curiosity, kind of a pleasure to the painting, adds some life to it. Even though these the red and the green, you won't see it if you look at the photograph. And again, quick strokes at the base of the rock, using a mixture of different colors indicates the different grass. Just to put different colors on the brush itself, but then make a quick stroke on there. And the different colors in that quick stroke really indicates a nice grass, high grass effect. Again, we can put some reflections back there in the water from the reflections from the bank. Realistically, if that water really should be showing reflections of the cliff behind it, but in order for the little pond back there to show up, I didn't bother putting a reflection too much of the cliff. You can see it a little bit in there, but I didn't want to put too much reflection detail in that pond. We're on the final stages now. Just the smaller brush, just adding some darks and some lights here and there, but most of the darks are in there. But again, just to put just a tiny bit of touch here and there for detail. light on the rock there on the right, and a little more shadow. So you can see that now that start to look more like a shadow in the grass in front of it now. I had it a little too dark to begin with. A couple of fine refinements of the mountains in the background, just a little bit here and there, just to bring them out just a little bit. What's nice about these alla prima paintings is that the paint stays wet enough to actually scratch your signature right on the canvas. Basically an hour and a half painting. Hopefully you've seen how easy this can be. Hopefully I've shown a thing or two that might be helpful in your painting. Please pick up a brush and try it yourself. You can do this. It's fun, it's invigorating. Please join me back for another one soon. Thanks for watching. I'm Stephen Rathburn. We'll catch you on the next one.